Well, here we are. And Fred Snyder, I hope you get better, because Fred was supposed to be our guest tonight. And for those of you who tuned in looking to see Fred, Fred will be back next Wednesday. And, of course, Sunday you can see him or hear him, and myself, I guess, from 9 to 10:30 on CIL Radio, which is www.650amradio.com. And then at night at 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock on CKNW, this is next Sunday, November the 1st, from 5 to 6 p.m. at cknw.com. In the meantime, Richard and I are going to talk about stuff. So we're going to talk about tools.
Stuff.
Tools.
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 We're both tool junkies.
Yep.
Richard knows we're tool junkies.
Richard Pitt and his partner Stuart Lynn were the first people in Canada to provide commercial internet services for people in a place called whimsy.com. And before then it was what, Van BC or something or other, because that was internet services.
Well, and the story really is that the BCNet, or not BCNet, but the CA domain registrar did things differently from the major registrar for domains, in that they reserved the .ca domain for national companies that were registered nationally
across Canada,
or had a presence in more than one province. They reserved .bc.ca for companies that were registered in BC and doing business in more than one town.
Okay.
And they reserved each of the town names, so in fact portmoody.bc.ca, for businesses that had their main place of residence in Port Moody in this case. And Whimsy began in Port Moody. Well, Stuart Lynn, bless his soul, argued left, right, and center and said, there's no way I'm going to be whimsy.portmoody.bc.ca, and he registered whimsy.com.
Yes.
Yes. So he also registered whimsy.bc.ca, and eventually we got whimsy.ca because we actually had a presence in Alberta for a while. So, you know, whimsy.ca and whimsy.com. But it was interesting. It was a bureaucratic nightmare, and I won't go into the personalities involved.
But even before Whimsy, he had, because we were on there, I remember, with Van BC or something or other.
Now you're talking,
that was UCP and Unix
right.
and stuff. It wasn't
That's right.
the internet as it became.
Now you're talking
but it was
about
the internet.
What's called a bang path. And what it was the name of the machine, exclamation mark, the name of the machine, exclamation mark, name of the machine. And it was the path between where you were and where your message was going that was how you addressed things.
And
this was
really
before the domain name registry, well, before we were hooked up.
Well, that's what I'm saying, because we could send email and so on way before the internet.
And we
were sending email back in '83. I was sending email.
83.
83.
Yeah. There was a UUCP registry where you could register your unique machine name, and everybody downloaded that set of maps and figured out how to get from point A to point B using that. And so the machines connected to one another. They dialed up each other and said, "I've got something for here. Can you handle it?" And they would say yes, and
because I
remember, or they'd say no, and it wouldn't go.
The first three people I had, I had three clients who were with at&t and really into this stuff. And back in, I don't know, 85, 86, we were doing their U.S. Canadian tax returns based upon them sending me email somehow or other to my system. And one of them we sent it to something San Francisco, another one was something New York, and something the other one was something Quebec or Montreal, I think, if I remember.
Well,
right.
and Whimsy,
but they weren't .coms and weren't .cas, and we had to be Unix.
It was a UUCP machine name.
We were Xenix at the time.
Well, Xenix, but it's a Unix lookalike, and it had a lot of the same facilities. And the reason it was Xenix was because Microsoft couldn't license the name Unix from AT&T. AT&T wouldn't let them, so they had to come up with a new name.
So they did. Xenix was it.
And that was Xenix.
We were Xenix.
Anyway, Stuart's machine was a gateway for about 400 BBSs in and around the Pacific Northwest.
Deep Cove and all
Deep
that
Cove
stuff.
and MindLink and all of the different ones.
went
MindLink
through
became
Stuart.
one of our competitors when we opened up the internet side
When
of
it actually
things.
became internet. But up until then,
That's right.
those guys were all going through Stuart Lynn's machine
That's right.
in Port Moody. And it was sort of interesting because this is the start of the whole thing, people.
And the machine name was Van BC.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I said.
That's right.
Lug or
Van
something.
BC.
Yeah.
Yep.
What was Vanlug?
Vanlug is Vancouver Linux Users Group. I don't.
Well, that's
I don't
what
have
that
a.
was,
I don't
yeah.
have the shirt on.
I
but
have
it's
one of those shirts too.
The,
Yeah,
the,
that was
one with the penguin.
Yeah,
that's
penguin,
right.
okay.
Yeah.
They look like these. They're actually gabardine
yeah.
shirts. They could be these ones. Well, we started off. We were going to talk about tools, and
We're tool junkies.
Tool junkies.
But we're tool junkies with a little bit of a weirdness. You know, we know the baling wire and chewing gum. For instance, with Whimsy. MindLink, when they did what we did with buying a whole bunch of modems and things like that, they built racks, wooden racks that all the cables come down nicely, and they were all layered out with the modems sitting nicely on racks. You know how we did ours? They were Velcroed on a wall.
Well, Velcro, well, that worked, doesn't it?
I love Velcro. It was great.
Richard, in 1986. In 1986. when did Mosaic come along and so on? When did that?
Mosaic,
that was 91, 92?
1991 is when Sir Tim Berners-Lee, prior to being knighted, came up with the concept of the Hypertext Transport Protocol, HTTP, which was the basis that the web, as we now know it, was built around. 1992-93, and really he created the first browser, and it was called Mosaic. 1992-93 was kind of, the high energy physics community is learning about this, and it kind of leaked out of that and into some of the other aspects that were hooked up to the internet, because the internet was very much science oriented. And in 1993, a book came out that was called The Internet for the Mac. Okay. And the Internet for the Mac had a computer disk in it that had the program to make the Mac talk TCP/IP, which is the underlying protocol of the Internet, and it had a copy of Mosaic. And on that disk, you took that disk and you put it into your Mac, and we got a call from the local Mac users group. There was about 25 or 30 of them, and said, well, we think that your computers can do what what needs to be done for this. You know, prior to that, Whimsy had been dial in. You dialed in with a dumb terminal, and you interacted directly with our computer. And Stuart looked at it, and he says, yeah. And about 4 hours later, we actually had the modem set up so that we could do TCP/IP over the modems, and the Mac users group became our biggest fans. And they were dialing in, and they were interacting with the internet. And the next year, or about 8 months later, out came a book, The Internet for Windows. And it too contained a disk. In this case, it contained the TCP/IP stack. And the rest is history, because really that was the beginning.
I remember you coming over with this disc and sticking to my computer downstairs, and we had Mosaic.
Yep. And we had Mosaic, yep.
And we could look at stuff that we hadn't looked at. We could look at pictures. I mean,
that's right.
And the internet was actually faster before that, because we were sending text and stuff, and you weren't bothering with pictures. When we put pictures in, it slowed everything down.
It slowed everything down. That's right.
Zero. Yeah. Again, this is sort of fun. At least I think it's sort of fun. We're having a good time.